introducing Drawdown Explorer, the world's most comprehensive platform for climate solutions. My name is Todd Rubold. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at Project Drawdown, the world's leading guide to science-based climate solutions. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jonathan Foley. John is a world-renowned environmental scientist, sustainability expert, author, and public speaker. His work focuses on understanding our changing planet and finding new solutions to sustain the climate, ecosystems, and natural resources we all depend on. He currently serves as Executive Director of Project Drawdown. Just a little bit about Project Drawdown. We're a US-based 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're nonpartisan, science-based, and committed to stopping climate change. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, John, for joining us. I'll pass the mic over to you to get started with our Drawdown Explorer presentation.
Well, thanks, Todd, and thanks for the kind introduction, and thanks to everybody from, all over the world joining us today. So really, really excited to be with you today, and really excited to talk about this new Drawdown Explorer platform that we've been working on very hard for a while now. That's now out in the public, and we'd love to show it to you and also get some of your feedback. So I'm going to give a little presentation for, I don't know, maybe 35 minutes or so, I hope. And then after that, we'll have plenty of time for some questions and conversation, which you can do by submitting them in the Q&A feature later. But in the meantime, let me get started and share some things with you here. Let me just pull up the slides, and we are ready to go. Excellent. So I want to talk to you today about how we're approaching the issue of climate change and how we're going to be approaching solutions. But just to get grounded, we have to realize we're already in a climate crisis. This isn't theoretical anymore. The early stages of climate change are showing up already. They're already here. We see them now every day in terms of weather patterns that are changing, or changes in air quality from fires, or the impacts on our water, our food, our health, and our communities worldwide. And no one is immune from this. We are all seeing the impacts of the early days of climate change. And sadly, we are still lagging behind what we really should be doing to stop climate change. Our federal and international efforts have been pretty insufficient. And sadly, a lot of governments, especially here in the US, and corporations have been stepping back in their climate commitments. And as we see every day in the media or on social media platforms, there are levels of fear and lots of disinformation and polarization that kind of paralyzes us from taking action. And we really need to turn this around. So I think everyone on this call would agree that we need more climate action, not less. But even when we do act, we're not always doing it in the best possible way. Sometimes we're doing things we hear about that might sound like a good idea, but maybe they're not following the science very well. Maybe they're kind of a fad or a big boondoggle or greenwashing. And so we also need to make sure when we do act, we're doing it in the best possible way, following the best solutions and the most impactful strategies. So we need more climate action for sure, but we also need smarter climate action too. So that's the bad news. But here's the good news. The good news is we can still avoid the worst impacts of climate change if we act decisively and effectively starting today. And even better news is in the process of addressing climate change, we'll end up building a better, healthier, and more prosperous world than we've ever seen before. That's the really good news about climate action. And this is where we come in. At Project Drawdown, we're devoted to one and only thing, is to be a leading guide to science-based climate solutions and climate action. So we have, over the last number of years, worked really hard. A whole bunch of us have worked very hard from the origin story of Drawdown. We came out first with a book, and then we went on to give numerous updates electronically through in online courses and webinars and publications where we have been showing the world all sorts of information about climate solutions, showing you solutions that actually are here today and that work to address climate change, whether they're in the electricity sector or maybe over here in food and agriculture or across the whole gamut of technologies and areas we need to focus on. Project Drawdown has stood up more than anyone and shown what works, but also showing us that these solutions are here and that if we added them together and scale them, they would be enough to address climate change. So not only did it give direction to the world, it gave the world a bit of hope that we could actually address this big problem. We also started to look at things beyond just the size of solutions. We started to talk about their cost and, could we afford to do this? Because that's often an argument being made that we can't afford to address climate change. But our work and the work of others has shown precisely the opposite. In this cost curve, this is a curve where we stack up the cost of climate solutions from left to right, from the cheapest ones that actually save money to the ones at the end that are most expensive and that might actually cost us something. But our work has shown that, on the whole, climate solutions are not only affordable, they would make the world a lot of money. In fact, about 80% of the climate solutions we already have are more affordable than the things they replaced. So, yes, solar is actually cheaper than natural gas and coal. Electric cars are cheaper to own and operate over their lifetime than a gas powered car, etc., etc., etc. So, our early work has shown that there are solutions, these solutions work, and that they're affordable. And this gave us kind of a proof of the possible. It told the world that yes, climate solutions can work, then they're already here, and there's no reason not to go ahead and do this. That's great. That kind of bigger proof of the possible was the kind of first chapter of the work of Project Drawdown. But today I want to tell you about an exciting new chapter that goes beyond the work we did before. That what the work we did before was great, but it did have a few limitations. For example, we only could give information in the past about kind of global average numbers for climate solutions. There were just not enough data points out there. So we had to lump them together and give you kind of a global average picture of how does solar work in terms of addressing climate change, or heat pumps, or electric cars, or silvopasture, whatever. We only had a little bit of data to work with, so we had to extrapolate to the entire world. We also talked about the world from today through the middle of the century to show that they could scale by mid-century to really address the magnitude of climate change. So we had big global numbers kind of extrapolated all the way to 2050. And unfortunately, the way we did this kind of work made it very, very hard to update. If we updated one solution, we had to go update all the rest of them at the same time. Otherwise, it wouldn't work as a system. So those are some of the limitations of our previous work. But now, in this new chapter, we're taking a big quantum leap forward. And we're building a tool that is designed for action. So let me tell you about it. It's the Drawdown Explorer. The Drawdown Explorer has this name very intentionally. It's meant for you to explore these solutions and learn about them in great depth. We're no longer ranking solutions from 1 to 100 based on our judgment. Instead, we let you rank the solutions based on yours. What do you care about the most? The size of a solution, the cost of a solution, the speed of a solution, whatever you want. But also you can learn more about the solution than ever before. Learn about how it can work in your backyard and how it works today with the most recent up-to-date information. So this is really exciting. You can go right now to drawdown.org/explorer and follow along if you want in another window and see the Drawdown Explorer and what we have intention for this. Now, the Drawdown Explorer is really powered by an incredible amount of science and big data, like nothing the world has ever done before. We literally have 24 PhDs working across the world on this project right now, from very different disciplines of engineering and science and technology, all working to figure out what is the best science out there. And this isn't just our research. We're analyzing the research of the entire planet. We're synthesizing every single publication in science and engineering, technical papers, journal articles, white papers, you name it, synthesizing the state of the knowledge of the entire planet, not just our opinion, the world's opinion, and pulling it all together through about 20,000 hours of research so far, collecting trillions of data points. That's not an exaggeration, where we're putting this together for over 150 different solutions. And not only doing all this careful analysis, research, and synthesis, we're also putting great care into the editing, design, and production of this website so that it's really beautiful, accessible, and something you can actually read and want to look at. And put together, this is an incredible new resource for the world. And what we're doing here is we're really kind of bringing the intelligence of the world's understanding of climate change to the here and the now. Our previous work talked about global trends between now and 2050. but that's not very actionable. None of us live in a global average place, and none of us are thinking about every day equally between now and 2050. And what we found again and again is people wanted the latest data, kind of like a Bloomberg terminal for climate action, giving you the most up to date information from not only this decade, how about this quarter of this year? And make sure that it's routinely updated so you can be confident you're getting the latest, greatest information in what can be very rapidly changing fields. But we're also bringing it home to the local, to your neighborhood, to your community, to your state, to your region. And we're using the power of big data and geospatial analysis to literally map climate solutions down to the local level to the extent the data allows. And that's only going to get better as we have more and more data building up over time. So we're bringing the data to you today and to you at home, the here and now. But beyond that, we're also realizing there's some other big strategic insights that we could be offering. Let me tell you about three of these. The Drawdown Explorer spends a lot of time talking about the speed of climate solutions and the need for so-called emergency brakes. Because as we think about addressing climate change, we have to recognize that climate change is a cumulative problem that we have to work on every single day between now and the middle of the century in order to avoid the worst aspects of climate change. So to bend the curve really quickly, we need so-called emergency brakes, climate solutions that act really fast, faster than normal, that help us get big wins on the board early. And that also lets us buy some time for other things like infrastructure to be built, the restoration of nature that can take time, and new technologies that can take years or decades to mature and enter the marketplace. So emergency brake solutions are crucial. They help us bend the curve on future warming quickly. They focus on fast-acting pollutants like methane and black carbon, for example, but also on things like large pulses of carbon dioxide that happen all at once, like when we clear rainforest. And emergency brakes can help us catch up. So we focus on these emergency brakes a great deal, whether it's stopping deforestation. 11% of the world's emissions come from deforestation today. That's about 1.4 times the size of the emissions of the entire United States economy. But we don't talk about it very much. And stopping deforestation is one of the fastest ways we have to stop climate change. Because when a forest burns down, it burns 100 years or more of carbon in a single day. So if you prevent deforestation, you prevented 100 years worth of carbon from going up in smoke, compared to a coal power plant, which burns carbon a little bit every day for decades. So stopping deforestation is big, and it's an emergency brake. Also, methane is really important because methane is not only a potent greenhouse gas, much more powerful pound for pound than CO2, but it's also a fast-acting greenhouse gas because it punches all of its heating power into the first decade or two after it's released. So by preventing methane emissions today, we get a disproportionate impact because it's a super pollutant, but also it's an emergency brake because it's very fast acting and bends the curve very quickly. So the Drawdown Explorer lets you search for these so-called emergency brake style solutions, and there are a lot of them in there, and I just showed you two. The other thing the Drawdown Explorer helps you figure out is what we call hotspots. These are places geographically where solutions can play an outsized role. In the past, our best work, the best work of the IPCC, everybody, kind of gave one number for the planet for the performance of a climate solution. But it turns out what works in California is very different than what works in Cairo, and they work very differently. So by using geographic data and kind of assessing climate solutions down to the level of pixels, we can target climate solutions to where they can be most effective. And if we do this right, we can sometimes see a 2x, 5x, 10x increase in the effectiveness of a climate solution by simply putting it in the right place. Let me connect the dots here a little bit. I told you about deforestation being a really important greenhouse gas emergency brake. Well, we can go further. Not only do we target tropical deforestation, we can target it to particular places. For example, in these kind of orange areas here in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, etc., we see areas where forests are being cleared. But in the red areas, those are forests that also sit on top of peatland. And what we find is that about 2% of these forests contain most of the carbon going up in smoke. By focusing on less than 2% of this forest, we get kind of a magnifier effect in terms of climate action. We can also identify hot spots in other parts of the world. This is looking at agricultural production of rice or of fertilizer use, showing how we can target some parts of India much more than others to get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of methane, in terms of fertilizers, and so on. And then we can stack them together and find geographic portfolios. This is looking across the country of Vietnam, asking what are the best combination of climate solutions to give you the biggest impact overall. And as you go up and down the country, the solutions vary a lot, whether it's protecting forests, whether it's changing fertilizers, or whether it's changing the way we grow rice. The portfolio depends on where you are and what's around you. And now, thanks to the power of big data, we can show how solutions work at this kind of local, more granular level. So we can show you within the Drawdown Explorer emergency breaks, geographic hotspots, and a third thing that we found to be really important is what we call benefit multipliers. Benefit multipliers are basically recognizing that climate solutions do more than just prevent climate change. A lot of climate solutions also clean the air that we breathe and therefore improve human health. They can sometimes create jobs and improve incomes, and they overall can help nature and communities thrive. So climate solutions have many, many other benefits to people and nature, and we started tracking those based on evidence-based indicators showing what really is supported by the science. And when we do that, we show that climate solutions do so much more for us. They can often help unlock public support, reduce social friction to implementing climate solutions, and expand maybe sources of funding. Because a lot of people care about their kids' asthma more than they care about future climate change, for example. So let's make a bigger case for climate solutions, showing not only how climate solutions on the left can affect carbon, but also how they can affect nature and human health very positively at the same time. So this is some of the things the Drawdown Explorer is showing us. It's actionable intelligence for climate leaders. And we really think it's kind of the ultimate climate solutions platform. Of course, it's grounded in real science. Everything is peer-reviewed internally and externally by other experts. It's using the latest data from not only us, but from the entire planet. It provides current and localized intelligence about climate solutions to the extent the data allow. It focuses on here and now, practical actions we can do here today, not something out in 2050 or 2100 in a hypothetical model. It also shows effective strategies for scaling, whether they're hotspots, emergency breaks, benefit multipliers, and provides tailored recommendations for different kinds of actors, whether it's community leaders, policymakers, businesses, investors, philanthropists, you name it. We're going to have actions for you specifically to take these solutions to the next level. And throughout, everything we show, everything we do is incredibly transparent, incredibly well documented, and everything is open source and free. So let me show you also a little bit of a video overview of this Drawdown Explorer, and then we'll go into it kind of into the details in just a minute. But here, let me show you a quick little video.
Throughout history, progress has always felt difficult.
We choose to do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
But we know with determination and the right tools, we can make the impossible possible. Stopping climate change is the seemingly impossible challenge of our generation. That's why we built the tool that shows you it's possible. This is the Drawdown Explorer, the world's most powerful platform for climate solutions. We've done the heavy lifting, trillions of data points, thousands of hours of scientific research, all distilled into one website, built for one thing: action. No guesswork, no greenwashing, just the clearest picture yet of what works, what doesn't, and what you can do right now. From emergency brakes that quickly bend the curve on greenhouse gas emissions, to geographic hotspots for maximum impact, and benefit multipliers that create new jobs, clean air, and improve communities. Whether you're shaping policy leading a business, funding change, or just asking, where do I start? Drawdown Explorer provides the expert guidance you need to take bold climate action. So build with it, invest with it, plan with it, lead with it. Make the impossible possible.
Alrighty, well, let's go take a look. If you haven't already, maybe go check out on your own browser on the side of your Zoom screen, perhaps, if you have a big enough laptop screen or whatever. You can simply find the Explorer at drawdown.org/explorer, or just go to our main page. You'll find it there very easily too. And when you go, you'll see this beautiful landing page with a little animated video. Changes every time you log on with something different. We'll keep changing the scenery for you, make it kind of fun. And as you scroll down, you're going to find right away something very nice. You're going to be able to browse the solutions, and the default is going to be browsing them by these kind of little pictures here, where you can scroll up and see more and more pictures. We have over 70 solutions online now, and we're building out to 150. In fact, later this week, I think we'll be adding another couple, and probably on a cadence of every few weeks, we'll be adding more and more solutions. And as we go, we'll be updating some of the ones that are already published. So as you can see in your web browser, you can see all these pictures that give you kind of a little picture of what the climate solution is. And you can flip the card by just hovering over it, and it'll give you just a little bit of thumbnail sketch about each solution. That's the kind of pretty version. There's another way to look at it too, is by spreadsheet view, which is if you hit this middle toggle here. You can also hit this right toggle on the little under browse solutions, and that'll give you a graphical summary. That's something we're going to be expanding greatly in the coming months to make it a beautiful set of interactive graphs of all the solutions simultaneously. But in the spreadsheet style view, you can sort solutions by their name, by their classification, their mode of operation, which sector they're in, but also things like speed and size. And if you scroll to the right, you'll see tons of other information in here. This replaces the old ranking we did of climate solutions that people sort of liked. But scientifically, I was always queasy about that, because we're ranking by just one attribute. You might want to rank it by something else, or change the assumptions and rank it any way you like, which now you can do. But if you go back and click on any one of these solutions, you'll find a kind of beautiful landing page right at the top of each solution. These are just 3 I pulled up recently around electric cars, LED light bulbs, protecting forest. And you'll see that each one has a very nice little kind of zoom in. Let's go to the forest one. A very nice kind of less than 100-word overview at the top with a picture. We did testing with different groups and realized people really like brevity. They want a short explanation. There's a hell of a lot more text down below, and you can accordion it all out and read the equivalent of like a master's thesis for every single one of these solutions. But we know people are busy and they don't read very much. You want to make it something you can scroll on your phone, so it's short and right to the point. Right away, you can see under Protect Forest that this is a highly recommended solution. And Drawdown Explorer, we give solutions 1 of 4 categories. Highly recommended. That's something that will be instrumental in the fight against climate change. We also have solutions we call worthwhile that are still good, but aren't going to be the big showcase stars in getting us to climate security. They might be very effective, they might be good, but they're probably going to end up being relatively small and not be gigaton size kinds of solutions. We have another category called Keep Watching, which are solutions that are not yet ready in the marketplace. They don't really exist in a real practical way, but they might someday. They're in a lab, they're under development, they're being studied, and we're watching those, and they look promising. And then for the first time, we added a category we say are not recommended. These are based on our assessment of 7 different scientific criteria, just not going to be an effective kind of climate solution. Either because they just aren't physically, biologically, or chemically viable, they just don't make sense, or they could present a novel risk to society or the environment that we're not really prepared to deal with. So based on our judgment, every solution falls in one of those categories. Protecting forest is highly recommended, and we show you 4 different sub-solutions. We're on boreal forest, temperate, subtropical, tropical. Just click on any one of those tabs and up come the data for each. And we have these kind of summary charts for every solution showing you the basics of what is the solution based on, how much adoption is there. The middle panel tells you about its climate impact of this solution, also telling you is an emergency brake or not. and what greenhouse gases are involved. And then on the right, showing you these additional benefits of following 18 other benefits to climate adaptation, to human well-being, or to the environment as a whole. So this is pretty exciting. And in just one little iPad screen worth of real estate, you learn a lot about this climate solution. But then you can keep going and read more about it and read more about it, of course. But as you keep going, you might find under a lot of these solutions something called the impact calculator. This is one I kind of saved from looking at cement, at alternative cement, where there are 3 different ways of making cement better that don't emit CO2 as much. So rather than us trying to model the future about how effective the solution could get in the future and how much adoption will the world choose, nobody really knows. That's just made up. So we just gave that power to you and made a completely interactive tool where you can move that slider back and forth and say, hey, what would happen if we made alternative formulations of chemistry of cement a little better than they are today? Make them a little better, nudge it to the right. And then what if in the middle panel, we adopted more of this solution? And we show in that green bar what we call the achievable range. This is what, in our judgment, could be done in the next 5 to 10 years based on current trends. Not out in 2100, but in the near term. And just kind of slide up and down and see what the impact is on the right. And that's all interactive, and you can click whether you want a 20-year calculation or a 100-year calculation. All of that is yours and free, and the math just happens right on the fly. The other thing we've done is, this is kind of the gold of the website in many ways, is the geospatial intelligence. This is where the data really went nuts. This is again looking at the solution around alternative cement. And here we're showing the current emissions of cement factories all over the world. It turns out just making cement, the outgasses CO2. It doesn't have anything to do with fossil fuels. It has to do with the chemistry, something called clinker, what makes cement cementy. And when cement cures, it outgasses a whole bunch of CO2. But it doesn't have to. We could change that formulation of cement to something that doesn't. But we want to show you where all the cement factories in the world are. And at this global map, you see, well, they're mostly in China. So let's zoom in. And you can zoom in and hover over any one of those little red dots, or change the map in the drop-down menu to another dozen or so geospatial maps, and learn about, down to the level of the individual facility in this case, about what's going on here and how effective these climate solutions could be. Let's look at another solution. Here's offshore wind. This one seems to be ticking off a certain president and of some country in the world. I don't know which, I forget. But this one shows kind of where different kinds of wind turbines might be effective in offshore wind around the world. And then we can zoom in here. I just happen to look at the coast of Scotland for no particular reason. And then kind of seeing where offshore wind is currently sited today. And this will be updated every year as we go forward. We can also look at, potential of other solutions, whether they're in agriculture, for example, looking at the problem of overuse of fertilizers, which is causing big nitrous oxide emissions on the left across India and Pakistan, but also in China and other places here. And we can see what the solution on the right would be if we implemented it, which is a more precise way of using fertilizers. These are on the same units, so you can literally compare the current emissions on the left down to the county and the solution on the right of what could be done to improve this. So this is a massive quantum leap forward in trying to get down to the local kind of actionable level of data. We also went further in terms of the last part of the website is something we call take action. If you go down a little bit further on each of the solutions, you'll see detailed recommendations for every solution that we quantify for about 10 different actors, whether you're a policymaker, kind of a practitioner in this field, a business leader, running a nonprofit, or you're an investor, a philanthropist, and so on, down to communities, households, and individuals. There's a detailed little list of things that you can do, but also resources that you can dive into to learn more and act more on this climate solution. So in a nutshell, the Drawdown Explorer really is bringing the best science and the biggest data to bear on the problem of focusing the world on climate solutions. And its goal is to ensure that every dollar, every decision, and every action we take moves us much closer to ending climate change. And here's the really cool thing. We're doing this 100% for free. There's no paywall. There's no subscription. You don't have to give us anything at all. And not only is this information free to the world, no anything, no ads, no subscriptions, nothing. All of the underlying data, all of the maps, all of the graphics, all the codes are also available for free. And everything will be here for free forever as long as we exist. So that's our commitment to you. We think that, when you're facing a crisis, you don't put crucial information behind a paywall. If someone, one of your friends is having a heart attack, you grab a defibrillator. You hope it's not behind a paywall someplace, right? So that's why we did this. But we're not done yet. There's a lot more coming. So this is Drawdown Explorer version 1.0. This is just the beginning, and we launched it a couple of weeks ago. And we're adding to it every single week, and will be through this winter, into the spring, into next summer. But we're already looking beyond that. We're looking to Drawdown Explorer 2.0. And here are just a few ideas. These are not firm yet. We have to go get funding for this. We have to go figure out how we're going to do all this. But here's just some thoughts. And I'd love to have more in the conversation and question and answer your suggestions about how we can take this platform to the next level. But here's some thoughts about things we could maybe do with Explorer 2.0 down the road. One of the things I'd love to see is creating more tools for community-based action. As we see our kind of big governments, like our national governments and UN level kind of government action, really failing us, maybe it's going to be more incumbent upon us in communities to step up and do what we can at the local level, but the local level everywhere. How do, small towns, big cities, states and counties, how do faith-based groups, how do schools, neighborhoods, other kind of community centers of action move forward with climate solutions? Well, we've already taken some interesting steps in learning how to do this kind of work. Our colleagues in Drawdown Stories, Matt, Scott, and others, have created a kind of an interesting prototype of sharing stories of climate action called the Global Solutions Diary. And I sort of like this. It's basically a big map where people can upload their stories about how they're addressing climate change from all over the world and doing what, social media was supposed to do for us, connect us together in a positive way to help each other solve big problems and maybe encourage us to do better. That's the kind of social media platform I want to be on, not the ones that just try to sell me crap and make me depressed and make me stupid. But maybe we could build something better where it's kind of a drawdown collaboratory around the world where people could take local action and share what they've learned how to do, what obstacles they've overcome, what things they're still facing, maybe asking for help, so that someone in Portland, Oregon might come up with a great idea scaling rooftop solar and then share it with somebody in Kazakhstan or someone in New Zealand or somebody in Nairobi. This is an unlimited kind of possibility by scaling grassroots action, but at the global level using these kinds of tools. So that's something I'm thinking about a little bit, but I'm not sure how we're going to quite do it. Another thing we're thinking about and already getting some kind of pilots on is helping others besides governments to get these climate solutions on the ground. We'll need communities for sure, but we're also going to need money. We're going to need philanthropists and investors to do a better job with climate stuff too. So we're going to build some tools for them too. And how does good investing and philanthropy work? Well, you start with people's values. Why do they give the money they do? Why do they invest the money they do? They often have what we call an investment or philanthropic thesis or a theory of change. That's kind of the how they do what they do. So a MacArthur Foundation does something a little differently than a Packard Foundation versus the Gates Foundation, whatever. That starts with them. But then we get down to the what's. And this is where we can help. We can give science-based filters to make sure that when people invest their money in climate solutions, they're getting it right. They're focusing on things where the science is actually correct, not something somebody sold them with a, kind of a good pitch deck and a dream. There's a lot of snake oil out there, and we can prevent a lot of that from happening. But we can also add what's called deal flow. Not only do we get the science right, we can help identify nonprofits or small companies around the world that need investment, that need philanthropy, by going out and looking for these around the world. And I'll show you that in a minute. And then we can add what's called due diligence. This is kind of like just doing a kind of assessment of, is this a real company? Is it really doing what it's supposed to be doing? Is this a real nonprofit? Is it really effective? Does it get a good score in Charity Navigator? Who's on their board? Is this for real? And so on. So maybe we can help investors do a better job by kind of meeting their values and their thesis where it is, adding the science filters, we've got that already, but also we can maybe add something about so-called deal flow. This is where we're partnering with a group called Vibrant Data Lab. So I would really encourage you to check them out too. They're creating something called a climate finance tracker. This is pretty cool. It uses AI tools to go out and scan the world for every single company, every single nonprofit in existence, and then look at all the financial records that are publicly available on the planet, whether it's nonprofits 990 filings or foundations kind of records of what they're giving, or is it in financial transactions that investors have to file. Vibrant Data Labs has been tracking all of that, and they've been kind of pooling it into who's doing what on climate. So, for example, we can zoom into people making alternative transportation solutions. Here's Rivian, the company that makes electric cars. You click on Rivian in this little ecosystem, and up pops a whole bunch of information, including how much funding they've gotten in their initial seed rounds, who's funding them, how many cars are they making, what's going on lately, blah, 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 blah. Click on any of those little dots. This is the kind of information that'll come up. Or here's a nonprofit organization, something called the Good Food Institute. They're promoting alternative proteins. So here we can learn about who's funding Good Food Institute and what are they doing and who are they similar to and so on and so on. This is really, really cool. So by taking the science of the Drawdown Explorer and the financial intelligence of Vibrant Data Labs, we can do some interesting things. For example, we just took a quick look comparing two very different climate solutions in the food sector. One we call silvopasture. It's a way of grazing cattle with trees on the landscape, putting trees in pastures. This ends up having a really good kind of positive climate impact. You can see about a gigaton worth of carbon impact annually from expanding silvopasture around the world. And then there's another proposed climate solution that turns out is not a climate solution, vertical farms. You can read about them in the Explorer, but not only are they not a climate solution, they're a climate problem. They're probably one of the highest emitting ways to grow food on the planet. So far be it from being a solution, it's actually adding to the problem. But a lot of people call it a climate solution. A lot of people are trying to sell it as one. So guess what the money looks like? Here's how the money is going. Silvopasture, which works great, is getting no investors, getting a little bit of philanthropy. But vertical farms, which is actually not a good climate solution, is a bad idea, is getting a whole bunch of investment dressed up as a climate solution. It's just greenwash. So we got a big disconnect between what the science is telling us about the impact of different climate solutions and where the money goes. And we need to kind of realign this to put the money into the most impactful places. But you know what? You can't solve a problem if you first don't know you have it. So seeing the problem is the first step in addressing it. Well, what else should we be doing with the Drawdown Explorer? I talked about community tools, I talked about investing tools. What else could we do? What else could we add? That's something I hope we can talk about in the Q&A in just another minute. But before we get there, I just want to wrap up with a couple of things. This is definitely a team effort. The Drawdown Explorer is the work of many people on our staff, but it's reflecting the work of many people around the world, many, many more. It's reflecting the state of the science of everyone, not just our organization. So we're all about collaboration and synthesis and bringing this together. But in that same spirit of collaboration, we also could use your help too. One of the things we need to help with is, I really hate to even mention this, but if you are in the means to do so, if you could maybe help fund something like this, that'd be great. We're not charging for it. We're giving it away. People think we're nuts for doing it. We won't put ads on it. We're not going to have subscriptions. We're not going to sell people's emails, nothing. So we're going to make nothing on a huge source of intelligence. And sadly, climate funding this year in the United States especially is way down, probably by about a third. So groups like ours and many around the country are facing a real challenge right now about how to stay open. But we want to make sure we can stay open and these platforms continue to be free and available to the world, because that's what matters. So if you can make a donation to this, I hate to ask, but I think we need to. And just mention, if you have the means to do so, you can go to the drawdown.org website/donate. And if that makes sense to you, great. If not, no worries. But we would really, really sincerely appreciate any help you can give us. Another thing we need help with, though, that's maybe easier, is to help us spread the word. We don't have a big PR budget. We don't have a Super Bowl ad coming up or anything like that. We are just doing this word of mouth through our friends, through our networks, and so on. So you're part of that. You're part of our community. So if you want to maybe go to drawdown.org/explorer and share that with the world, or follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook and Blue Sky and LinkedIn and YouTube, I believe. We're no longer on X. Didn't think that was appropriate anymore, but everywhere else you can find us at Project Drawdown. And many of you, I suspect, are on LinkedIn. If you go to our LinkedIn page, we just posted today a little post about the Explorer. If you want to just hit reshare, it shares to your professional networks too. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps us out a lot and helps the work. So with that, I want to just stop here and just say thank you so much for being here today, for your support, for your kind of contribution to Project Drawdown as a part of our community. We really deeply appreciate you and all of the time you give us. So thank you for being here today. And we'll stop here and maybe switch over to some Q&A and have Todd come back up and help us with the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who joined today. Wow, I've never seen this many questions during one of our webinars. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. Just so you know, Lisa and I are tracking all the questions you're asking. We're definitely not going to get to all the questions unless everyone wants to stay until Thursday of this week. We've got about 20 pages of questions that have come in today. It's just been incredible, the conversation in the background. So what we'll do is we'll try to summarize a few of those, maybe get back to you via social media, future newsletters, maybe an insights post to consolidate some of the major questions that arose today. But just a few of the questions here, John, that we've highlighted in the background. This first one made me chuckle, so I've got to ask you this question. This person said, I first heard about Explorer about a year ago, then I attended webinars in the spring. The question kind of goes on from there, but they're just wondering, what took so long? Can you talk about the process behind creating the Explorer and what's gone into the creation of this new exciting tool?
Well, it took so long. Wow, it seems like it's been so fast. Well, let me put it this way. Yeah, every one of these solutions is basically the equivalent of somebody going to grad school and doing at least a master's degree, if not a PhD. We're doing 150 of those. And we did it in a year so far. We literally got funding to get this off the ground and started bringing people on the team 14 months ago. So I think we're going at light speed compared to almost any other organization would ever do. So that's actually really fast. We do tell people about things before we release them, though, because we value your feedback. We didn't hide it behind a bushel basket. We didn't secretly, work in an underground bunker to do this. We told people about it because we thought it was kind of cool, and we got some feedback. And we also wanted the feedback of people as we were building it. Even before we released the beta version, we were kind of showing it to different groups of community leaders, policymakers, journalists, investors, philanthropists, just folks we knew, climate communicators, and got a lot of great feedback on the design, the language, and everything was peer reviewed. So we did this openly, no secrets, and we did it in 1 year and 2.5 months to get to the first, launch. That's breakneck speed. No one's really ever done that before. And the level of work that goes into this is insane. At least 20 people are involved in probably every solution before the major solutions anyway. And it's literally like, what would have taken somebody years to do in graduate school. We're doing 150 of them in parallel in 2 years. So, I see a question here. I'm going to just jump in and answer one. AI. I'm going to answer that because I bet a lot of people asked about AI. No, we have banned the use of generative AI in our writing, our research, our data analysis, and our content creation. We don't trust it yet. I can't look you in the eye and say this followed an intellectual integrity policy I can be proud of. We want to make sure that what we show you is our work. It is not plagiarized. It is the work we have done. We have analyzed multiple humans have checked it and rechecked it again. Now we do use some kind of AI kind of assistance like a spell checker, sure. We also use some tools that kind of scrape data, but it doesn't analyze or make judgments or write for us or create graphs or maps, any of that. That's forbidden here. We actually make all of our staff sign an agreement banning the use of generative AI for writing, research, and creative. I think we're the only organization I know of that has done so. But it's really important to us that you trust the work that we do, that it's transparent. And if it's done by some chat GBT thing, I can't tell you how I did it. I can't stand up and say that's our work. That would be a lie. So we don't use AI in our work. It would make our life a lot easier, but it would also make it a lot more fake. And when we say we want to be a trusted resource, it means we have to do the real work. So that's why we're doing it. Now, that
Great.
isn't to say all AI is bad. It isn't. A lot of AI kind of little tools, little algorithms like, Photoshop sharpening, spell checking, kind of double checking the math in a spreadsheet or something, that's fine. But not to write a paper for you, not to analyze data and make critical judgments. That's crazy. No one should be doing that.
Great. John, we had a few questions come in about partnerships, which you mentioned during the talk today. A couple folks were wondering about any sort of collaborations with organizations like Climate Trace or the En-ROADS tool from MIT. So maybe you could speak to that just a little bit too.
Oh, yeah. Boy, we have found that that's also one of the virtues of talking about this before we kind of finished it a little bit, is we started working with some really, really great partners. And Todd just mentioned a couple I love these organizations. So if you don't know about them already, one organization we work with a great deal is something called Climate Trace. Climate Trace was, well, Al Gore helped kick it off a number of years ago. And they're kind of working on the other side of the street. They're using like satellite data and geospatial big data to map where the emissions are coming from, where the pollution sources are, kind of where the dirty power plants are, where the big factories are. So we can go down and kind of figure out where we got to act. And they've been at this a number of years. And they, like us, put all their data out publicly. They just share everything really, really well, and they don't charge for it. So they're very similar to us in that respect. Now we're working on the other side of the street that says, well, what about the solutions? So we're not just tracking the coal power plants, we're tracking the solar panels that can replace them and how they work together. But by borrowing the data from Climate Trace, that actually gave us a huge leg up on getting our work done. So they were very generous and shared all their data with us. We're sharing all our data back with them, even before it's published. So they've been an incredibly good partner, and we're going to work with them a lot more, I think. Love, love, love Climate Trace. Another group called En-ROADS, well, it's called Climate Interactive is the name of the organization. They created a tool called En-ROADS, which is very different. It actually is a kind of global climate simulator that looks out to 2050 to 2100 and has kind of macro level global tools about what if we employ a carbon tax? What if we use more renewables? What if we phase out nuclear? What if we did this? What if we did that? And they made it kind of like a game where you can sim climate and you can see what the consequences are for the future. Because they did such a good job doing that, we realized we didn't have to. So instead of us kind of extrapolating our climate solutions out into the future, we said, no, we're going to focus on the here and now, practical implementation. That's our space. But En-ROADS is a good tool to do the what if kind of out into the future when you want to look far beyond what we can do in some ways. And we're talking about them about making our solutions and their model assumptions 100% integrated. That hasn't happened yet, but we're talking about it and hope that we can do that really, really well down the road. So that's something we're thinking about a lot. They're a great group. There's also Global Energy Monitor. We love those folks too. The Global Forest Watch, or WRI, which works with Matt Hansen's data from the University of Maryland, has been crucial for like global satellite data of forest and ecosystems, and so on and so on. So we've been working with a lot of great organizations that are about free data, open source, science-based, and give it away as fast as possible. They're just the best. And more. We'll be doing more.
We're also getting a lot of questions related to the 4 categories that you mentioned: highly recommended, worthwhile, keep watching, and not recommended. A lot of people asking, why do some solutions fall into that not recommended category? But could you just talk a little bit more about how different solutions are sorted into those 4 different categories? That'd be great, I think.
Yeah, if you want to read more about it, there's right on the homepage a primer for our assessment of climate solutions, which applies to our work, but also could be adapted by other people if they want to do a similar thing. So we thought very long and hard about this, like a lot, months and months and months of debating and trying out different kinds of approaches here. And what we found is that climate solutions that work, we assess climate solutions around 7 major categories. I won't go through them all, but they include, is it plausible? Does this actually work? From the physics, the chemistry, and the biology. So that's a really important one. Another category is it, effective most of the time, or does it sometimes fail? Is it risky? Does it pose a new kind of novel environmental or social risk that we've never seen before? Does it perpetuate the expansion of fossil fuels? Things like that. So we have a few other kinds of solutions, criteria like that. So we kind of evaluate solutions across these several different categories and then answer the question yes or no, or maybe for each of those 7 questions. And based on the answers to those, they fall into those 4 categories. Highly recommended, they meet all 7. Worthwhile, they meet 6 out of 7, just maybe aren't the biggest. Keep watching means it looks promising, it's plausible, it isn't risky, but it's just not ready yet, like fusion or something like that. And the not recommended is where we're going to get some pushback, certainly from people who promote those solutions. There are going to be a number of those ones that we say, sorry, but this either doesn't actually work, or we believe it poses a risk to the environment or society that's novel, or it encourages the expansion of fossil fuels and is basically a greenwashing device. If that's why, then that's our judgment. You may not agree with our judgment. That's fine. It's a free country, free world. Go ahead. But at least we're transparent and rigorous about all this, and we're applying the same rules systematically, and you can see them, and they're to the extent possible as objective, clear, and documented, far more than anybody else has done. So take a look. You might not always agree with us, but I hope you respect it.
There are 2 questions here related to audience that folks have been asking a lot about too. So I'll split this into a part 1 and a part 2. So part 1, we have a lot of educators. It seems like based on the Q&A, who've been asking how can I take this information and use it in a classroom setting? I know we haven't specifically set up the tool in that way, but can you talk a little bit about how this resource might be helpful for educators and students in the educational setting?
Yeah, it's really hard to do everything with one tool. So I would love to see kind of an educator's guide to this or an education version of this. That is not something we currently have on the docket. That would be a significant amount of work, but something that a lot of us on our team care deeply about. People have worked in higher education. I used to run a science museum. Elizabeth Bagley is a education PhD herself. We have a lot of people on the team who care deeply about these kinds of things. So we're going to keep thinking about that. It's not right on the front burner yet, but it's something that's kind of a clear next step, I think, for us to think about. Um, yeah, that's just the honest answer. I couldn't give you the perfect way to use it in every kind of classroom. I think it would be pretty tailor-made for, college courses and things like this is a really great resource, of course. But in K-12 or kind of informal education, it's not really packaged right now for that. It would have to probably be add some kind of layer or repackaging it for those kinds of uses, but it could be. That would be fantastic.
And we do have a number of partners we work with that are more directly engaged in classrooms at those different levels. And so there are definitely opportunities for us to explore that as an organization going forward and see where those connections might.
We're a really small team, folks.
People are usually shocked to realize there's about 24 of us or something like that. It's not a very big team. Another question on the audience topic too. Folks are wondering, what are we doing to make sure that big impact players, so maybe the other end of the spectrum here, folks working in policy, business leaders, investors, philanthropists, what are we doing to ensure that they have this tool available to them? They understand how to use the tool, that type of question.
Yep, it's designed for that. Our primary audiences, again, this is multiple audiences, but you can see in the take action section kind of the key audiences we wanted to hit. Do include policymakers, community leaders, and so on, but also investors, philanthropists, business leaders who probably can move pretty nimbly with a lot of resources, unlike governments now. So that's something that's really important to us. So we spent a lot of time this spring and summer doing outreach to those kind of groups and making sure we designed it with them in mind. So we had Todd, you and I both did a lot of this kind of focus groups with people who were from philanthropy, from big foundations, for example. We did focus groups with business leaders and sustainability staff from major big companies all the way to small mom and pop companies. We also talked to startups and investors and people, in the climate tech space saying, hey, how can this tool be useful for you too? And we've got a lot of feedback. So already I think we have a good outreach to a lot of these groups, but we always need more. And that's where you all can help is if you know people in these different lines of work and can help spread the work, especially in places like LinkedIn and elsewhere. We can't be in every Fortune 1000 office, every state capital, every foundation in the world, but maybe with your help we can. So that's kind of the hope we have. Another great group that has kind of a force multiplier for us are consultants. A lot of big consulting firms are way bigger than we are, can maybe use the Drawdown Explorer as a starting point for their work. But when a company like Deloitte or PwC or McKinsey or BCG or whatever, any of those, which have literally hundreds of thousands of employees, we have 24. When they go after something, we hope that we are an indispensable resource to them too. So we're going to be doing more outreach to the big consulting firms, especially the big 8, and saying, hey, don't forget about this tool. By the way, it's free, and we'd love to work with you to make it be helpful for you, because you're going to be in a lot of rooms we'll never be in. And we don't care if we get credit. I mean, it's nice when people put our logo on something. That's great. But frankly, we just want the job to get done. So we tell people, like, please steal this. Take it. It's yours. That's why everything is free. All the maps, all the graphics. You hit a little button that says save me, and it'll hop right to your desktop to go right into your term paper, your PowerPoint deck, whatever. So please use us, and we hope that through direct engagement from us, but probably more importantly, indirect engagement through all these others, this tool will become kind of a force to be reckoned with.
Excellent. Well, like I said, we have so many more questions we could get to, but we're at the top of the hour now. So I want to thank John for joining us today. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this webinar today. As John mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization, so we really do rely on support from individuals like yourself. So if you'd like to donate, we would truly appreciate it. I want to invite you to join our next webinar on October 16th, where Matt Scott, our Director of Storytelling and Engagement, will be kicking off the new series of Drawdown's Neighborhood from Los Angeles. So we hope to see you there, and we will send out a recording of today's webinar in the next few days. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.